So, welcome everyone. My name is Helen Vasilakis, and I'm the chair of the Junction Residents Association. Uh, Thank you, everyone who's joined us on this evening. Just wanted to start with a land acknowledgement, and then we'll move along after that. We recognize that we live, work, and play on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We acknowledge that Toronto is covered by the Treaty 13, the Toronto Purchase, which represents a sovereign relationship between the Mississaugas of the Credit with the Crown. Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas, the Haudenosaunee, that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Under this covenant, we have to share the responsibility of ensuring that the dish is never empty, which includes taking care of the land and the creatures we share with it. We all eat out of the dish, and all of us share this territory with only one spoon. We recognize the original caretakers of the land and the enduring presence of the treaties that guide the relationship between nations and with the land of past, for the present, and future. We are all here to work together to build a healthy, caring, and vibrant community where all people can thrive in the present and for generations to come. We also acknowledge that a land acknowledgement is not enough. It's merely a starting point. In this spirit, we would like to share an Indigenous-led resource called the Native Land Digital. I've shared it in the chat. There's a link in the chat if anyone would like to access it. It's an Indigenous-led initiative. Their mission is to map Indigenous lands in a way that changes, challenges, and improves the way people see history and the present day through mapping, education, and community building. So again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. And I'd like to also thank the candidates who've joined us. Karim Bardisi from the Liberal Party, Anya Gorka from the Green Party, and Butila Karpochi from the New Democratic Party. We really appreciate you joining us for this important process. I would also like to add that all the candidates who were listed on the Elections Canada website and whose parties currently have seats in Parliament were invited to participate in this event. The purpose of this event is to help to inform our community about each of the parties' platform to support a well-informed electorate, and to give each candidate an opportunity to introduce themselves to the Junction residents. The agenda will begin with each candidate's introduction, followed by a prepared question and answer session, and then it's going to end with a Q&A from attendees. Mahima Madhava will be our moderator for the evening, and I'll let Mahima take it from here. Mahima?
Okay, thanks, Helen, and welcome everyone. So for this evening, we will be hearing from three of the candidates in the Taiaiako'n Parkdale High Park riding. Just a few housekeeping items. So again, the purpose of this meeting, it's really so that we can get a sense on how each of our candidates plan to represent the interests of Taiaiako'n Parkdale High Park residents at the federal level. And before we begin, just some housekeeping reminders. All the attendees will be muted. Accommodations for speaking will be made for accessibility purposes. Given the duration of the meeting, we might need to limit the number of questions and responses in the Q&A time, but we'll try to answer, whatever we can. Attendees will be invited to write questions in the chat as well, and we will be moderating those. The order of responses from candidates will rotate so that each candidate has an opportunity to answer a question first. Each candidate will be given either a maximum of 2 or 3 minutes, depending on the question, and candidates will be given a 15-second notice before their microphone is muted to help them stay within their allotted time. The meeting, like Helen said, is being recorded and it will be made available afterwards. And we just ask that everybody, we just maintain a respectful discourse throughout the events. And this is a community event, and we're just here to hear one another out. And so with that, I will begin with our candidates' introductions, and we will start off with, sorry, give me a second, Kareem Bardisi will be going first. Kareem?
Thank you so much, Mahima. Thanks to the Junction Residents Association, to Butila and Anna and everyone who's put their name on a ballot in this important election. I'm Kareem Bardisi. I live with my family in Roncesvalles Village. Our kids go to Garden and Fern schools, and I'm a Policy Institute leader at TMU, Toronto Metropolitan University, as well as a former Globe and Mail journalist and a policy director to Premiers Kathleen Wynne and Dalton McGuinty. So I bring experience, I bring local energy to this election, and I bring, as part of a renewed Liberal Party of Canada, a Mark Carney offering, which is very focused on economic development, on the housing that we need to build, and on confronting Donald Trump and his policies, building the Canadian economy back, and trying to prevent a Pierre Poilievre government, which I think would be very damaging to Canada. And that's the choice in this election, Mark Carney or Pierre Poilievre. With me, you'll get local energy, local enthusiasm, and a strong policy basis with which to represent the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Kareem. And next, Butila, please.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. You know me, I'm Putila Karpoche. So in my opening, I want to talk about why I am in politics. When my family and I moved to Canada, it was this community of Taiaiako'n Parkdale High Park that welcomed us with open arms. The kindness of our neighbors and the support from services in the community helped us rebuild our lives. And the most powerful gift that we received was the sense of belonging and hope for a secure future. I always knew my life was going to be about service to community and to Canada, and to give back to the people and country I love and we chose to call home, to make sure that we always keep the spirit of a strong and compassionate Canada, the spirit that I felt. I have deep roots in the community, as you know, and my work in the community goes back 20 years, long before I became an MPP. Politics is an extension of my work in community organizing. There's a lot of uncertainty right now, but no matter what, I'm always there for you, in your corner, fighting for all of us. We can restore hope and build a strong and compassionate Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Butila. And now Anya, please.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Anna Gorka. Bienvenue à ce débat. J'aime le français, and to me, French is an example of the cross-cultural solidarity that we have in the country. I am a Green. I always have been from the time I used to lose at Monopoly on purpose so that I could get some money, but also have a nice looking place. And that was my idea of winning Monopoly. And this really translates into the 6 green values of nonviolence, participatory democracy, ecological wisdom, sustainability, respect for diversity, and social justice. So as a newcomer to Canada, I went through the ropes. I worked out west and where the oil sands are in Alberta. I went to the Cégep on the French program in Quebec, and I feel that I do have a handle on what it is to be here. My primary areas of focus are housing, having worked as an architect, and I'm here to uphold and feeling a little tender today about a slightly discrediting
I'm
decision.
afraid that's a minute.
Okay, well, greens are valid, and I will explain why. Thank you. Let's go.
Thank you, Anna. All right, so next we're going to be moving on to the question portion, and we will be starting with Kareem for the first question. And this is a question about the Taiaiako'n Parkdale High Park community. And from your experience in speaking with community members and constituents and hearing from them about their concerns and priorities, what do you think is the most important issue facing this riding? And Kareem, you'll be going first.
Thanks for this question. in conversations with folks around the riding, no matter what their economic situation, whatever their life circumstance, the thing I'm hearing more than anything else is about the availability of affordable housing for this community and for people in this community, whether it's people who are living in really stressed economic or health circumstances, people who are perhaps homeowners, but they're on fixed incomes and their costs are exceeding their ability to pay for those costs, or whether they're homeowners, but they don't know whether their own children will be able to continue to own property or to have an affordable place to live in the riding. So this is the biggest issue I've heard about. And again, with the renewed Liberal Party of Canada under Mark Carney, we've put forward a most aggressive plan to build and develop housing of all kinds since the Second World War. It's called Build Canada Homes, and it'll really meet the need wherever the need is, at all levels, deeply affordable, supportive housing, and different kinds of housing for different kinds of needs. And it's a very aggressive plan, and I think the measure in it will be in the confidence that we hope to get from the people of this riding and across Canada to be able to implement that plan. I'll add, though, a second piece, which is always under the surface, and as soon as I mention it, people respond, which is the kind of dual fear and threat about Canada's sovereignty and the threat of Pierre Poilievre. Donald Trump is creating havoc in the world economy, and people are looking for stability, for focus, and they don't trust Pierre Poilievre. They see aspects of his politics which are playing into the Trump playbook, and they're deeply concerned about that, and they're looking for a steady hand and a focus. And I believe Mark Carney, Renewed Liberal Party of Canada, and myself help bring that.
Thank you, Karim. And next is Butila.
Thank you. What I hear from constituents across this riding is that life is getting more and more unaffordable. Of course, housing is a really big part of it, but everything is getting expensive. Groceries, and there's a lot of other bills. Toronto is an expensive city to build a life in, and it has gotten so much worse in the last 10 years. And so a very important issue that we are all facing is the question of how do we build a city that works for everyone, not just the wealthy? Whether you're a renter or homeowner, whether you're an essential worker, an artist, a senior on fixed income, a young person who wants to start a family, everyone should have the chance to thrive. And so for that, we have to build affordable housing, but we also need strong public infrastructure, from transit services to childcare. And we need strong policies that prevents this corporatization that we're seeing, the price gouging on essentials that everybody needs to live on. There's a lot of anxiety right now. I do sense very strongly the fear that people are feeling. And even with the Trump threats and the tariff threats, at the end of the day, what people are worried about is this economic turbulence. Will they survive the economic turbulence? Life was already unaffordable. Will we have enough to eat, a safe place to sleep in, heat during the winter? And so in these times of uncertainty, and we know this, in times of economic crisis is when governments weaken rights, corporations profit at people's expense. And so we really need to make sure that there's an effective NDP voices in the opposition to keep fighting for families and for working people. That's what the NDP has always done, and we will continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Butila. And next, same question, Anya.
If the main issue that concerns people outdoors as I meet them isn't homelessness and housing instability in all of its forms, then it's related, such as the traffic that happens when people have to move to Milton or Ajax or Woodbridge. Even one of my volunteers comes in from Woodbridge and their daughter is in school here. Then it's also an instability from economic uncertainty related to housing, which the Greens fold into a pretty massive solution, which I'm about to explain. And finally, I have to admit, I hear about Palestine every day, all day. And I think global peace is top of mind for people because the ricochet from that country, from the Middle East will happen. And if there is a weak link globally with human rights, then we are all in danger of conflict, of autocratic holds on us, and limitations, constraints, dangers, bad feelings, intergenerational trauma. We must work for peace. So Greens talk about progressive tax reforms, and they shouldn't be too painful. And this means that anybody earning 40,000 and under, which is an extremely high percentage of people right now, it would not be subject to federal taxes. And progressive taxes would collect in reasonable ways to generate a $50 billion stipend for regular services and inducing businesses.
15 seconds.
So on housing, it's important to support new housing programs. This is a strong suit of mine, which I'll get into on the housing question. And in terms of peace, that's also applicable in another question.
That's time, I'm afraid.
Yes.
Thank you, Anya. And now we're on to the next question, which is on cost of living. And there's a maximum 2 minutes to answer. So when the spring of 2024, Statistics Canada reported that nearly half, 45% of Canadians reported that rising prices were greatly affecting their ability to meet day-to-day expenses. This was 12 percentage points higher than what was reported 2 years earlier. The cost of living is a major point of concern for all Canadians across the country. What policies will you and your party implement to address and help reduce the cost of living? And for this question, Butila will be going first. Butila?
Thank you. You all know that New Democrats, we are the only party that fights for working people. Generations ago, we fought for Medicare. Right now, we're fighting for pharmacare, dental care. We ensured that the Liberal government supported Canadians through the worst of COVID. And we will fight in Parliament to ensure that people are protected and supported through the trade war and the tariffs. There's a separate question later on housing, so I'll focus on some of the other policies that we are focusing on to reduce cost of living. And we have a strong plan to make life more affordable. First, we want to scrap GST on essentials, things like home heating, utility, phone bills, internet bills. These are not luxury items. We need this for survival. So we want to remove the GST on that. We want to put a price cap on essentials at the grocery store so everyone can put food on the table. Right now in Canada, we have 5 families that own majority of the grocery chains in Canada. They dominate the sector. Think about that for a moment. 5 powerful families and their corporate entities are influence what 40 million Canadians eat and pay for groceries. So we want to end this free ride to big grocery chains by bringing in more price transparency. We want to stop shrinkflation. We want to implement real consequences for price fixing. New Democrats will lower grocery prices because that's what we do. We fight for working families, not for big billionaire grocery giants. We also want to make sure that the grocery sector, we support the small and medium groceries, including community-driven food cooperatives. Get into that and set up shop. We shouldn't have to see an explosion of food banks having to close because even they are running out of food. So these are some of the ways in which we can address cost of living by really tackling some systemic changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Butila. Anya, same question, please.
Well, I already spoke about agency to have more spending power. It is the lower income that has the ability to hopefully buy things if they have less taxes. And Greens really are comprehensive this way. The Liberal plan saves $412 annually, and the NDP plan doesn't address root causes. It is more about essential goods. So guaranteed livable income is something what the Greens talk about. Now we also need to be activistic, and this is why it's so painful for Greens who just carry themselves very much ethically to be excluded today from the national debate. Because it hurts us. And we are activists. I went today to the TikTok headquarters. That's 200 jobs that are in our riding, just like the Nestle chocolate factory, experiencing wage discrimination at the hand of American corporatization, which has been in place. But for the first time this year, we have an American corporate leader who doesn't care so much about the community here. I'm going to ask Karim Bardisi to influence the Liberals in their cabinet order to shut down. And this was in the wake following suit of Trump. And then, in fact, Trump reversed that decision, but we must also reverse that decision quickly and protect those jobs because it's a media platform that's here and Canada needs to influence it, be in on it. There are artists hired in Parkdale High Park, and we're losing jobs right now. So vigilance there is going to have to be a grassroots approach to every elected leader who has the platform to amplify these issues. I also finally want to close with the provincial
15
jurisdiction, Ontario Federation of Agriculture vetted plan of the Greens to really reactivate agriculture here. For affordability, yes.
Sorry, Anya, I did.
Yes.
Are you okay? Thank you. Next, Kareem, please.
Thanks for the question. I see the cost of living challenge. We are not a low-income family ourselves, but I usually do the weekly shopping for our family at Maple Fruit on Rothsfales. Used to cost about $50-$60 a week. The rest of the weekly grocery bill at different places added up to about $250-$300 a week, and we've seen that going up when we fill up the gas at Lambert Oil around once a month. That we saw that cost going up. I also see it with my students who are experiencing, who are experiencing food insecurity, who are having to make real choices. And of course, we see it in our riding, where there's too many people, quite a ways along the income spectrum for whom the numbers just don't add up well enough. And so, I think we have some strong plans to deal with this. We have a modest income tax cut that we're proposed in our platform. We've eliminated the consumer carbon tax while doing other measures to continue to bring down greenhouse gas emissions. We are the party of $10 a day childcare, and we want to extend the dental care program as well as preserve and keep and grow the pharmacare program. I'll also add that there's something we need to do to address the cost of living for everyone, which is to raise incomes. And that's why I really appreciate Mark Carney's focus on the economy, diversifying the economy, creating better trade links with other countries as well as within Canada. The best solution to cost of living pressures is to increase incomes while being very vigilant on the regulatory front with those companies and those sectors that are doing quite well and that don't face enough competition. I feel it. We have some measures on the tax side, on the spending side to support people. And we also, I think, need more aggressive competition policy to make sure that competition is real in the sectors where there's not enough competition, and that will help bring prices down.
Thank you, Karim. Okay, so now we're on to our question number 3, and this question is housing. And again, there'll be a maximum of 2 minutes to answer. So there's been an alarming increase in homelessness and lack of affordable housing in our riding and across Canada. According to Zolo and Treb, in February 2025, the median sales price of a home in the Junction was approximately $1.1 million. And rentals were $2,375 a month. So what is your party's position on affordable housing, and what solutions do you see to mitigate the absence of supply? Part B, what is your party's plan to end homelessness? And finally, what is your party's plan to make the cost of housing more affordable for renters? And we will start with Anya for this question. Anya?
Thank you. The Federal Ministry of Housing has $6 billion to play with, and it is important to be advocates for our own communities. So, for example, sometimes this money has a hard time getting around, and to date, only $4 billion is spent. And some, Mike Morris, some Greens that I've tried to help Boost and Elect are excellent advocates. They are implementing programs that we can't seem to have in Toronto, which is a transitional tiny home zone that is healthy and safe. And these are prefabricated units that get somebody a sense of dignity and space before arriving at a permanent housing solution, because it costs sometimes $3,000. Sorry, I forget this. It's an exorbitant fee to house people in hotels in Toronto, and we're wasting a lot of money doing that. So where there's a will, there's a way. Now, of course, there is a suite of solutions in the green platform about vacancy controls and making sure that housing isn't speculated with, a beneficial landlord registry, and anti-flipping laws. These are all going to help maintain the price and perhaps lower it. Market standards, which I'm not so savvy to, but I certainly can advocate for production. And now, I mentioned last night in a debate Douglas Cardinal, who talked about Indigenous self-determination and access to wood, which we should not be just giving away to the United States for suburban sprawl. And that might stop. We make our own modular housing here, and it's very affordable to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Anya. Kareem, you're next.
So we really need a really ambitious plan. Again, Renewed Liberals under Mark Carney, we have proposed the most ambitious plan since the Second World War, Build Canada Homes, which will bring, we anticipate 500,000 new homes a year at maturity. We need more housing of all kinds. And so that's the answer to the absence of supply, to build homes and to get the federal government back into the business of building homes as we had during this after the Second World War. That's working directly to develop, including on federal lands. It's working with other developers, both private and public and not-for-profit developers. It's investing $25 billion in debt financing, another $1 billion in equity to have investment in prefabricated homes. It's investing $10 billion rather, towards various forms of affordable, deeply affordable, and supportive housing, other kinds of housing that particularly support homeless people experiencing homelessness. We have a great example of a site partnership with the University Health Network on Dunn Avenue in Parkdale. That's a result of an earlier federal Liberal effort. You're going to see further commitment from us in a renewed Liberal Party under Mark Carney, and a real focus on this, where we're bringing all our attention. And with me as a government MP, you will have someone who is a local advocate for this. It's not going to pay off overnight. We're not going to see rents go down overnight, but we need to get the supply online urgently, and we need to get the supports to people who need that support urgently. And we're going to work with extreme diligence to make that happen. And with me as your MP, I will work hard to support the community in that regard.
Thank you, Karim. Butila, same question.
Thank you. Here's the thing. If you have a good job, that should be enough to be able to pay rent, have a decent home that fits your family. But that's not the reality today. We have even two-income households, people barely being able to afford rent, let alone be able to dream of buying a house. Generations of Canadians, young Canadians in particular, are losing hope because people are working harder than ever, and they're still unable to afford the home that they hope, they dream of. So definitely one part is to increase the supply of housing. But here's the thing. The federal government needs to build more non-market housing. We're talking about co-ops, not-for-profit housing, supportive housing, the kind of housing that we desperately need, that we have a very, very short, small supply of, but also it is the kind of housing that stays affordable for the long term. And that kind of housing supply is one that the private sector will never build. And so it's incumbent on the federal government to build that. We have examples of that across our riding. We need more of those. Under the Liberal government during the Chrétien and Martin era, they ended the National Housing Strategy, and they downloaded a lot of the responsibility to the provinces and municipalities. And since then, we have pretty much been stuck. So the federal government needs to get back into building housing, and we really need to focus on building non-market housing immediately. And increasing the supply of non-market housing, it also has the added benefit of impacting the cost of housing that is built in the private sector, because now you have greater supply overall. And so part of the NDP plan is also to make sure that we have a national strategy. We want to implement a national rent control. We want to ban rent evictions. We want to ensure that American corporations, don't buy homes and the affordable stock that is still there. And we want to crack down on corporate landlords using AI to fix rents.
Okay, thank you. Those were really good responses, everyone. Thank you. Next, oh, hold on. I think I just skipped a question. Apologies. Right. Okay. Next question, number 4 is healthcare, and you'll have a maximum of 3 minutes to answer. With access to healthcare being a pressing issue locally, provincially, and federally, what steps will you and your party take to uphold the Canada Health Act and provide the necessary funding to ensure equality of access and non-discriminatory care for all Canadians, regardless of who they are or where they live? And the first person is Karim.
Thank you for this question. Medicare is become one of the keys to Canadian identity. It's some of the things that really distinguishes us in our mind and in our way we are able to go through this world. That as a Canadian, you have the right to free and timely healthcare access is something that we cherish, but that we too often take for granted and that we need to build on. Liberal Party of Canada is the party of the Canada Health Act. I think you'll see in us, and you will see definitely in me as the prospective MP for this riding, an ironclad commitment to the Canada Health Act, a real devotion to continuing to build up the public system in our riding and for all Canadians. You know, I worked as a policy director to Kathleen Wynne and Dalton McGuinty under great health ministers such as Deb Matthews and George Smitherman. And during that time, we made real progress. We reduced healthcare wait times. We really deepened the commitment to Medicare and ensured that we closed any of those loopholes that opened the doors to private healthcare in Ontario. You'll also get with me, and I think you'll get with the Renewed Liberal Party of Canada, a real ability to work with the provinces. You know, this is one of the recent successes of our government is to strike healthcare deals, to make investments, but not to let provinces off the hook, to make sure that they are making the investments, to make sure that they're sharing data, to make sure that there's accountability. And I think you'll continue to see that in the healthcare commitments that we have and will make as a party. And of course, you know, the Liberal Party of Canada more recently has built up the dental care plan and the pharmacare plan. We're proposing in this campaign to extend dental care to 18 to 64-year-olds, building on the plan we already have. These are key to what it means to be Canadian. It's key to the kind of life that people want to live. That's key to enabling so much other parts of our lives as families. I also want to say a bit about healthcare workers, of whom there are many in this riding. In our community, they need to be attended to, they need to be supportive. Healthcare unions are extremely important to both defending human rights, to defending equity, and to defending and speaking for their patients. And so with me, you would have a strong defender of healthcare unions and the healthcare workforce for whom we also need to make investments.
Thank you, Karim. Butila, same question.
Thank you. Here's the thing with the Canada Health Act. Conservative premiers have been bringing in dangerous for-profit healthcare, and the federal Liberal government has been looking the other way for 10 years. We need to close loopholes that exist in the Canada Health Act that allows for private clinics, user fees, upselling. And if we want to reduce American influence in Canada, we need to stop these American corporations from setting up private clinics in Canada. I mean, Kareem talked about being an advisor to McGuinty and Wynne. We saw privatization of healthcare under the two governments, privatization of home care, delisting of healthcare services like vision care and physiotherapy. So protecting public healthcare means having the guts to defend it against privatization, and coming up with solutions that will actually ensure that healthcare is there for people when and where they need it, just with your health card, not with your credit card. Another important thing that the NDP is focusing on right now is that nearly 7 million Canadians don't have access to family physicians. So we want to make investment a priority to make sure that every Canadian has a family doctor. And having a family doctor is an upstream preventative intervention, because it makes sure that people's health and well-being is maintained, that prevents things from getting worse. And so it's an overall investment to the system that is fiscally responsible as well. And when it comes to healthcare workers know that the NDP has always been on the side of workers and in defending our universal public healthcare system since the beginning. We are the party of healthcare. We brought Medicare into Canada. And so that's why you have organizations like the Canadian Nurses Union endorsing the NDP in this election, because they know no matter what, convenient times or not, New Democrats will always be there to address the most pressing issues in our healthcare system and ensure that all Canadians have access to healthcare services, and to expand and grow and strengthen our healthcare system. Thank you.
Thank you, Butila. Anya, same question on healthcare for you.
Yes, my shadow cabinet tells me that we've gone from 95% funding to 60 for services, and my gut instinct and my listening confirms it. I have one child without a doctor, and it was actually hard to find an MMR vaccine. We were behind. Runnymede Clinic, right in our riding, didn't have one at some point. Then my child got vaccine hesitancy, and the federal level has the ability to influence how funds are deployed and how equal it is across the country. So when you have a province refusing to be on board with funding that's earmarked from the federal level, well, it ought to be withheld, and then those governments have to answer to their people. But it's important to maintain strong communication lines and generate consensus about this. It's an economy of scale we're talking about that helps make services cheaper and people enabled to do other stuff. It's economy of scale. It's why we're doing universal health care. We really don't want to move and slip towards a model where it costs money. So Greens have some unique takes on health, which is that we're stuck in curing problems rather than being preventative. There is a pressure from us always and mention to apportion a larger sum for mental health, 10% of provincial budgets, because this will prevent a lot of physical illnesses, chronic conditions. There are environmentally induced problems, which is why when you have a party that focuses on the wellness of the ecosystem services around us that we all eat and breathe, then you won't have as many endocrine problems and many other ones, allergies and such. What else can I say? Housing is a major determinant for healthcare, so it's now being prescribed by physicians, and Greens support and feedback about this reality too. Trying to remember what else I wanted to say today. Yes, we have diminished outcomes, diminished access. I am taking care of somebody who called me because I'm curious. There are 76 social service and legal aid agencies that help people in Ontario. And right now, this man only has access to a home in Thunder Bay. And I'm wondering what the problem is. So you can trust that I've got passion to look into this. I know by name lots of homeless people who will not use the shelter system. And glad that a nothing without us, about us approach is being adopted, and competitions, private run competitions are happening in the city for housing plans for increasingly unwell homeless people in our riding.
And that's our time.
Thank you, Anya. Next, our next question is on the economy. And you'll have a maximum of 3 minutes to answer this question. Currently, Canada sends 75% of all exports to the United States. Given our current challenges and strained relationship with the US, our economy runs the risk of stagnating. So this is a two-part question. How will your platform and that of your party respond to US tariffs or other measures targeting Canada's economy or its sovereignty? And B, how will your party grow the economy? What is your party's plan to support businesses and local economies? And how would you, as our member of parliament, work with the other provincial governments as well and other parties as part of a Team Canada approach? And how would you improve and resolve interprovincial cooperation and trade? So the first, we have Butila going first.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, here's something that we all know, that Trump is an agent of chaos, and anyone who pretends that they can predict or plan for what Trump is going to do to our economy is not being real with you. We can be reactive or we can be proactive, and we can focus that our response to Trump's threats by looking at what we can control. Domestic policy that supports Canadian workers and families. We can strengthen our economy, make it more resilient to external pressures. And so what the NDP is proposing is a Build Canadian, Buy Canadian plan, a massive national public infrastructure and procurement strategy. We're going to have an ambitious housing plan and have federal funded projects that use 100% Canadian steel. We want to make sure that the Canadian government bans US companies from federal procurement contracts as long as they are targeting Canadian goods with tariffs. We need to make sure that we are able to support local Canadian businesses, have them as part of our procurement strategy. Make sure that a lot of the firms that Canada is using, that they have strong worker protection and employment protections to make sure that they have decent wages so that they can be part of, the workers can be part of the project to build Canada. We also want to make sure that we increase Canadian content for all federally funded projects. Everyday Canadians are doing their part in buying Canadian. And so really, we need to make sure that that is systemic and is done by the federal government in all of the procurement and public infrastructure work that we're going to do. Now, I have a very strong track record of delivering results in the riding, things that have actually improved the lives of constituents. And I did all of that while in opposition, which I'm sure you know is a bit harder to do. But I did that because I know how to collaborate. I was a member of the opposition, and yet I was able to push conservative ministers under the Ford government to deliver results for our riding. And that shows my collaborative work that, I have done in the last 2 terms. As well, we have shown in the last federal parliamentary session that the NDP knows how to work together to move Canada forward. That's how we got farmer care, dental care. We sped up the timeline of the implementation of the $10 a day childcare. And there's so much more that we got in as part of the agreement and working together with the Liberal government. Finally, I know how provincial governments work. I bring that experience with me. And so when we want to ensure that federal government and provincial governments work better, I've been there. I've sat on those benches and I bring that experience with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Butila. Next, Anya, please.
All right, it needs to be said that pipelines are like a Cold War. They go hand in hand with emissions-oriented urbanism. It checks out when it comes to a return on the investment to pipelines. So Greens are talking about, the poster behind me, the green economy, which is an opportunity right now. A green economy would involve clean energy projects, and something like a high-speed rail, which I'd like to hear more about. It was virtuously said by the Liberals, from Toronto to our other major hubs like in Quebec and Ottawa, would generate 50,000 jobs on, I think, a $32 billion over many years investment. And those are permanent jobs. It's infrastructure. Of course, there would be some corporations involved, but pipelines, they're dangerous. They often get exploded by armies. It happened in, the Baltic Sea lately, and it's a risky way to go. It generates heat where we rely on the refrigerator of our planet and migration patterns that sustain us and keep forests vital. This is very real. These heat islands of production generate wind patterns, and greenhouse gases are a slope that we are on, and we can still turn around. It's urgent to do. So now that's a big project we're suggesting, and on the ground protecting jobs. I already mentioned TikTok and Nestle Chocolate Factory. That's right here in the riding, and I'm eagerly investigating other jobs that are at risk. Also, folks from the auto sector can go right to the high-speed rail projects. And then Germany, when the Berlin Wall fell down, had sister Bundesländer between the East and the West. We can pair Alberta with the Maritimes and move our workers around. It can be done with good diplomacy. We need to fix our port in Halifax for export, because right now Canadian goods go through Boston. So improving trade with Europe, that sounds pretty safe. And of course, I don't know the interprovincial barriers to trade right now, but those have to go away. It's just plain logical. And I'll leave it at that. I'm just glancing at my screen for other parts of the questions.
No, I think
I've touched on it.
comfortable with it. Yeah, I think, yeah. Thank you, Anya. Karim, same question. Karim, you're muted right now.
Sorry, yeah. So Prime Minister Carney, I think, has had a really thoughtful, measured response to, as Batula mentioned, it's quite chaotic, and we're in for a bumpy ride for the next few years. And so, although we can't predict with certainty any individual action that's going to happen south of the border, we can have a plan that is strategic, that's targeted. You've started to see that from Prime Minister Carney in this campaign. With counter tariffs, measures that protect Canadian industries as much as possible, that might be importing US inputs as part of those counter tariffs. But the bigger piece is really around building our cross-Canada economy and diversifying our economy to other trading partners. As we've seen, this is a global economic disruption that Donald Trump has created. We need an experienced hand who's dealt with crises before to help respond to that. And I'm very confident in Prime Minister Carney's response to that. In addition, we have supports for workers, supports for businesses, further EI eligibility, some of those measures that we're going to need during this period of disruption. I think this is also an important time to remember that we are, we may be here in Taiaiako'n, Parkdale, High Park. We have some businesses that are resident in the riding, as Anya mentioned, many small businesses, but we're all part of a larger Canadian economy and a larger global economy. So we're all subject to the ways that the tech giants, the tech billionaires can affect our economy. We're all subject to the disruption that is reverberating across the global economy. And so we need a plan that's going to reach out to develop that cross-Canada economy as much as possible. With me, you'll have someone who is an economic policy leader in terms of the think tank I run, the DAIS. In my time as working on economic policy with Premiers Wynne and McGuinty, I understand where the potential alignments are between provinces and the federal government, and indeed with the city. The city has an important role in economic development. It's sometimes forgotten a little bit. And And this is a time when, the Team Canada is mentioned in the question, and we did have a time when there was a greater collaboration between the provinces and the federal government. Before this crisis, it was the Chrétien era. I think we're already starting to rediscover that. I think you're seeing strong leadership from Prime Minister Carney and strong alignment with the premiers, some of whom I have a relationship with the exception of Danielle Smith. And I think that is very promising. With Prime Minister Carney, you're really getting the national perspective on these questions with a strong, smart, measured response. And with me, I would play an active voice on this on behalf of our riding at the table.
Thank you, Karim. All right, we're on to the next question, which is on the environment. And again, and for this, there's a maximum of 3 minutes to answer this question. So given the growing urgency of the climate crisis, the City of Toronto is implementing the Transform TO Net Zero strategy with a goal to reduce community-wide greenhouse, community-wide greenhouse gas emissions in Toronto and reach net zero by 2040. What will you and your party do to mitigate and slow climate change, including reducing greenhouse gas emissions? Part B, how will you and your party ensure a just transition away from a fossil fuel driven economy to a green economy that supports workers and their communities? How much will you and your party spend on these initiatives? And finally, what will you and your party do to ensure a robust environmental assessment process related to both private and public projects across Canada? And Anya, you're the first up for this question.
That's all right with me. I did mention the progressive wealth tax generating 50 billion. And so in the suite of solutions for a just green transition, which are acts that we've been excited to table for 15 years or more, there will be free post-secondary education. Everybody has a right to education. It happens in Europe. I'm privileged to an EU passport, so I'm excited for my kids who get those too, but I feel bad for people who cannot re-educate here easily, readily. We do it when it's an emergency for ECE workers in our schools, but it should just be across the board, because if people want to get off of fossil fuels and implement a heat pump in their homes, there aren't enough professionals right here in Parkdale, High Park, Taiaiako'n to properly install those. So those are green jobs ready, and there's a demand. So green jobs, there's a whole slew of green jobs to deploy. I've lost my stream here. I'm looking at the question again, pardon me, sometimes this happens. Of course, I just went to Transform TO strategy. I versed myself in the new standards. I mean, we have an extraordinary amount of high heat days in the riding, and it is going to be so important to depave the 30 square kilometers of parking in Toronto alone. That's excluding roads. And urban heat islands, when it's re-radiating pavement, the difference is so diametric to trees that turn solar radiation into biomass and cooling that the calculus is not owned by people here yet. And we are losing people in their apartments. So emissions come from projects like site-specific depaving projects, and that's something I'm passionate about. So I've joined groups that are going to help advocate for implementing Transform TO, because I think it's at the root of the matter. And I've seen more and more municipal federal partnerships that help things happen, because that disconnect that Karim identified is big. In the housing sector, I am a LEED accredited professional, and I think that a lot of these standards are superficial. They neglect site selection, which shouldn't induce traffic. So the spa being a primary example, and I'm glad there's still momentum on that file. I worked so hard on that file because it really removed people's places to go. The most heartbreaking feedback I got in South Parkdale is that, well, that's all we have as an apartment dweller. So 3 pillars of Transform TO: housing, waste, and transportation. Let's work on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Anya. Karim?
Thank you for these questions. These are moral imperatives, and this is something that cuts across generational lines. I'll maybe just maybe mention first a bit of my experience. I was on the board of Corporate Knights as well as the Toronto Atmospheric Fund. And in my time in the McGuinty and Wynne governments, part of efforts that really aggressively helped reduce climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, in particular the closure of the coal-fired plants, remains as one of North America's leading ever GHG reduction efforts. And as part of the Kathleen Wynne government, as her Director of Policy and Deputy Principal Secretary, helped bring in the cap and trade system that helped meaningfully reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We have to continue to work on this. In particular, there is an opportunity, I think, to work with the oil and gas sector in Alberta to help reduce methane emissions, which are amongst the most potent and among the most strongly contributory to greenhouse gas emissions. And that's an important piece of work we have to do. We also have, as I mentioned our housing program earlier, and building on the suite of programs we already have to help people invest in retrofits, to help people invest in and de-risk some of the projects, including some of the ones Anya was talking about, that make a meaningful difference and allow people to really participate in the solution. I think the choice is quite clear between a Carney government and a renewed Liberal Party of Canada that sees the economy and environmental issues going hand in hand, and Pierre Poilievre, who is clearly just on one side of the issue and is scrapping any initiative that will meaningfully reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a very stark choice in this election on environmental and climate issues. I think you'll also see in us additional measures to help support things like conservation, the creation of new national parks, measures that help people really experience the outdoors and Canada's natural beauty in its full measure, because that's also really important to get the public support we need for some of these very difficult transitional measures. I'll finally, I guess, conclude by saying that there are so many workers, so many leaders in this riding working in the green economy space, in the climate space. One of the things I would propose or offer myself to do in the riding is to help bring those people together. There are already some climate action groups, specifically in Taiaiako'n, Parkdale, High Park. I think there's tremendous energy and tremendous insight in this community that we need to bring to Ottawa. And I would be a champion of that as a government MP if I won the privilege of election.
Thank you, Karim. Butila?
Thank you for this question. Look, we know conservatives don't even believe in climate change as a reality, but Canadians deserve a government that will take the climate crisis seriously, not give big oil whatever they want. That's what we have been experiencing and seeing under the Liberal government. The NDP wants to stop and end the corporate welfare and subsidies that we give to big oil once and for all. The Liberal government, they promised to be climate leaders, but they let us down. We see in the lobbyist registry, delayed action, but you see meeting after meeting after meeting with all of the big oil CEOs. So there's one thing to talk about climate action, but it's another thing in terms of actually delivering. Remember that the Liberal government bought a pipeline for $4 billion, and that cost has now ballooned to over $30 billion. That's money that we could have used to actually investing in a just transition. The NDP is proposing that we create an east-west electric power corridor and increase our investments in renewables. That should be the priority. And that would create more jobs, help transition the workers into the clean energy space. That would be just transition because it's centering workers or thinking about their jobs and livelihoods and making sure that they are a key part of our transition away from fossil fuels and would reduce emissions. Now, there was a part of the question that talked about environmental assessments. That's a really important issue for Torontonians and Ontarians, because there are three big things that are happening in Ontario where we need the federal government to step up and do their part. They have failed us. One, Highway 413. It's a massive project that's going to destroy the environment. That needs to have an environmental assessment. We have had from Toronto Liberal MPs, senior cabinet ministers who have stayed silent on this matter. We have had to call for them to say something about it. And what did the Liberal government do? They decided to skip the environmental assessment for the Highway 413 project. Why? Why are we doing that? Why is the federal government playing their part? Instead, that money could be going into investing in public transit. And we know public transit will reduce emissions. It's the best option in an economic center like Toronto. We need reliable transit services. The subway cars that we have in the TTC, they are at the end of their design life. They keep breaking down. The Liberals promised during the last election that they would fund new subway cars, but they did not. I had to stand outside Keele subway station together with TTC riders, calling out the Liberal government and asking them to keep their own promise. Ontario Place for All, another federal impact assessment could have been
I'm
done
sorry,
there.
that's time.
Thank you, Batilla. And next is a question on equity, and there's a maximum of 2 minutes to answer. Given the challenges made against equity policies, for example, discrimination targeting trans, non-binary, and gender diverse youth by provincial governments in both Alberta and Saskatchewan, which were enforced via the notwithstanding clause, how would you ensure the continued protection of human rights within our community? And Kareem, you'll have the first opportunity to answer.
Thank you for this question. This is key in this moment, and again, it's a very key differentiator between, in particular, the Liberal Party of Canada and the Conservative Party. We are the party of the Charter, and we will defend the Charter to its utmost at every opportunity. Conservative Party of Canada, Pierre Poilievre, and his allies in certain provincial governments, including we mentioned actually yesterday, even Ontario, are the parties and are the factions that are looking to chip away at those rights, especially by the use of the notwithstanding clause, sometimes in very negative, gross ways that target communities and target the most vulnerable among us, using the Trump playbook. And that's embedded in the question here. So we are unabashed advocates of the Charter, unabashed supporters of minority communities, wherever and whomever they are. And with me, you will get a very strong advocate for that, building on the very strong human rights record and the defense of human rights that Arif Virani championed both as MP and as Minister of Justice and Attorney General. You will see in us unequivocal championing of human rights based in the Charter, the document that is hanging in our office at the campaign, that is distributed for free to schools, to anyone who wants it anywhere in Canada, and is the guarantee of so much of this conversation and so many of the rights that we enjoy today.
Thank you, Karim. Next, Butilla.
Thank you for this question. It's really important, and I'm thankful to see an equity question. So people may not know this, but in June 2012, we passed Toby's Law in Ontario. Toby's Law, basically what it did was to add gender identity and gender expression to the Ontario Human Rights Code. Until 2012, we didn't even have that. And so trans people were not protected under the Ontario Human Rights Code. I worked with our former MPP, Sherry DeNovo, who has been a trailblazer when it comes to 2S LGBTQ rights, and with Trans Lobby Group, a small but mighty group of trans activists who worked 7 years to make this happen. And so it was such an honor to work alongside them and make sure that rights for trans people was enshrined in our Ontario Human Rights Code. We have to be very vocal when it comes to these attacks that we're seeing. To be an ally means to push back, whether it's through legislation, but also on the streets and through protests. We need to make sure that as representatives, we are among the people doing the work on the ground and saying, no, we will not accept this. When it comes to using the notwithstanding clause, Doug Ford used it twice. And both times when he used it, I was kicked out of the legislature for protesting against the use of the notwithstanding clause. The second time when he did it was, if you remember, an attack against education workers through Bill 28. And what happened then? People from across the province, not just education workers, but also union workers from all other unions, didn't matter which sector, private or public, everybody came together and we pushed back. And the NDP, not only did we do that work in the legislature, but on the streets and in front of the legislature. And we made sure that that bill was repealed. So you can see that when governments use notwithstanding clause, it takes work not only in parliament, but also takes people organizing and using people power to push back.
Sorry, that's time.
Thank you, Butila. Anya, same question?
Oh, I just want to add to these very thorough responses that that I have full faith in the leadership on this panel today to stand up for each other, because everybody has the right to self-determination, self-identification, and I will show up whenever needed in an activistic way as well. I wanted to add. Oh, it escaped my mind. Sorry, let's move on to the next question. You have my allies. Well, I'll mention that my own team is very diverse, and so I walk the walk. Thank you.
Thank you, Anya. Our next question is on, sorry, on immigration, and there will be a maximum of 2 minutes to respond. Amid ongoing pressures around housing, healthcare, and the economy, each party's immigration platform reflects its broader priorities. In October 2024, the government changed its permanent resident target over the next 3 years, dropping it from 395,000 in 2025. Under the new policy, the target would fall again to 380,000 in 2026, and then to 365,000 in 2027. Immigration still remains a defining issue within Canada and during the election. What is your party's immigration policy? And we're going to start with Butila.
Thank you. Look, we're all settlers here, right? We are immigrants, and we need a compassionate and fair immigration system. NDP, we believe that our immigration system should be accountable to Canadians, and it has to be rooted in our values of compassion, of fairness, of respect and dignity. And so what we would like to see is, first of all, a clearing of the backlog. There's almost 1 million cases in backlog. Refugee sponsorship, it has a processing timeline of over 3 years. That's unacceptable. So we need to fix the immigration backlog in terms of refugee application sponsorship that, Canadians are sponsoring refugees for. We also need to make sure that we fix the backlog when it comes to reunification of families. Why are we keeping families separated for so long? We really need to make sure that we prioritize this reunification. We also want to make sure that we improve and fix the foreign credential recognition. We need more healthcare workers. There are lots of qualified immigrants who are coming in and they have experience. So let's make it easier. Let's stop putting up barriers and let's make sure that they get the credentials and they are able to enter our healthcare system and contribute in a space where there is massive staffing, retention, and recruitment that is, staffing, retention, and recruitment crisis. The other thing is that in the last number of years, since the pandemic, especially under the Liberal government, what we have seen is a system that relies too much on temporary foreign workers. And so we need to make sure that this system that exists right now, which is very exploitative, is fixed, because we cannot deny these people their rights as workers. We also want to make sure that we...
Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Butila. Next, Anya, same question.
Sorry about that. The Greens have a holistic take on immigration that includes recognizing environmental refugees. And I think that the Greens are also seeking to stop the incorrect credentialing so that people can fit in more accurately and more quickly to the healthcare profession and other professions. We've seen the PR system being manipulated towards favoring students for super funding our schools temporarily in an funding induction program that wasn't sustainable and left youth without family kind of stranded and having to go back, incurring expenses and giving Canada a bad reputation. So more consultation and eyes on such maneuvering will be necessary going forward. I think Canada can accommodate people if we generate the work programs. A lot of people would love to be farmers. So I turn back to the agriculture program because so much of our produce in the West End food market, food terminal, just west of where I live in the southwest corner of our riding, so near the Sobeys and Mimico, 70% coming from USA. And then, of course, our necessary tropical fruits from other places. But we should be having our own apples and fruits and vegetables. So there are sectors that are disactive because of global trade. And I'm just so disappointed with the three parties, the three legacy parties that have always promoted corporatization, free trade agreements that neglect a lot of people. That's about all I have to say about refugees and immigration. Thank you.
Thank you, Anya. Karim?
Immigration is key to our national identity. It's something that Liberals have been proud to champion for decades, including different refugee groups that have come to Canada for various reasons over the decades. There used to be actually a cross-partisan consensus on immigration among the major parties, but recently the Conservatives have decided to kind of associate themselves a little bit with the faction that says that immigration is potentially damaging to Canada. I just don't agree. There is one aspect of immigration policy that we really need to attend to, and at our think tank at the Dais at Toronto Metropolitan University, we see what happens when provinces underfund post-secondary education, which resulted in colleges and universities, particularly in Ontario, particularly in our riding, bringing in large numbers of international students, well in excess of our ability to provide, again, the housing, the healthcare, and the jobs needed. And so that was an irresponsible choice by those provinces and in turn by some of the colleges and universities. The federal government, I think, has an important role in ensuring that anyone who comes to Canada under any of the pathways has an opportunity to integrate into society, that there's a place for them to live, to have a livelihood and have the potential, if that's part of the pathway, to become a citizen. And we want to expand those pathways to citizenship to everyone, including, we're linking it back to housing, including the waves of immigrants who have come to this riding over the years and decades. We need to continue to offer that. I don't think it's about any particular number at any particular time. We need to have the resources to help integrate immigrants and refugees well. I expect that we will have more disruption on this as Trump's damage to the global economy and his own choices within the United States continues. And with me, you'll have a strong advocate for strong immigration policies.
Thank you, Karim. And the final prepared, predetermined questions. The final question is on childcare, and you'll have a maximum of 2 minutes to respond. While the Canada-wide early learning and childcare program is making childcare more affordable for parents for children under the age of 6, there is still a large gap when it comes to care for kids between the ages of 6 to 10 in before and after school programs. The question, what are the party's stances on considering expanding the program to include all childcare programs regardless of age? And we're going to start with Anya.
Well, I think the Greens are advocating for the ability for parents to actually take care of their own children for 3 years, up to 3 years' time, should that be the choice, because it often is the choice. There are so many parenting models out there, and it would increase the outcomes for better outcomes for children if that's the desired way forward. It's almost a post-colonial condition to institutionalize children so much. For some people, it works if they have strong family supports and people to pick up children and knowledge of where they're going to school. But a lot of families are insecure when they arrive to Canada. So I think this covers more bases. We look at child poverty and there are strong policies in that regard. I have permission from the party to keep working on a school lunch program, which I think would draw attention to children in a very special way because there's hunger in the school system. I'm afraid I cannot speak to before and after school care programs. Sorry about that. Um, Possibly because the ship has sailed for me. Mine are now older, but I do support, of course, and the party does support access to care programs. I think we're probably all in alignment there. Thank you.
Thank you, Anya. Next, Karim, please.
So this is one of the signature programs of the Liberal government, one that we hope to continue and to build on, and one that I believe that Pierre Poilievre cannot be trusted to retain. Now, that said, we have some challenges with this program. Ontario was the last province, or one of the last provinces, to sign a deal with this program, and as you know, Butila knows in her work as a former work as a provincial critic in this area, this is something where we need to make sure that there is the supply available in the sector with a strong bias and support for the not-for-profit sector to make sure that the availability is there. And so I think that's the priority in terms of the existing program. And also to ensuring that those other income supports, including the Canada Child Benefit, which supports families with children of this age and helps them access programs through that income support, is very important. So we need to ensure that the supply is there. There's also historically been a bit of a supply challenge for infant care. So there's a lot of work to do. With me as a prospective government MP, will get my commitment to work across jurisdictions on this issue. And I think, you know, part of our commitment more largely to national renewal involves the kinds of programs that allows people of different ages to participate in this program. You know, I have experience of this program myself. Our kids are 13 and 10. We weren't able to access this program when our kids were going through this system. And we need these programs to exist so that people can continue to raise children in this riding.
Thank you, Karim. Butila?
Thank you for this question. I'm very proud to say that I've done a lot of work on this file, including making some very direct impact locally in our riding. You know, as the critic for childcare and the official opposition NDP for Ontario, a lot of our work and pressure to push the Ford Conservatives to actually sign the national childcare plan, which came at the 11th hour, but we did it. And of course, you know, not just that, but securing the future of this program and making sure that Ontario did also sign on to the extension of the program. You know, also when childcare providers were threatening to leave the program, I worked alongside Parents for Childcare, local families, and organized to convince the operators to continue to stay in the program so that affordable childcare spaces continue to be an option in our riding locally. And I think it was 4 childcare centers that had left but came back. And so that was a big win in terms of the local community efforts and organizing work. Now, the question very specifically was on for children who are a bit older, between ages 6 to 10. One of the things is that as part of an election promise in 2019. The Liberal government said that they were going to expand the childcare spaces for ages 6 to 10, the before and after school programs, but they did not move at all. In fact, even the $10 a day childcare program, it was supposed to be a 10-year plan under the Liberal government. And the NDP said, no, parents cannot wait 10 years for the $10 a day plan. We need that now. And as part of the confidence and supply agreement, the NDP sped up the timeline to 2022, which is why $10 a day childcare is a reality today. But very specifically on age 6 to 10, the NDP has said that we do intend to support and expand the program, just as we are expanding healthcare programs, because this is an investment that will help strengthen our economy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Butila. Thank you, everyone. So that's sort of the end of the all of the prepared questions. So we're going to move on to the questions that we've received from attendees through the chat and also through the form that when people register, the registration form, people sent in questions as well. Some of those questions have been incorporated into the questions, the prepared questions. But there are a couple of more questions that we've received through the chat. First, we've got a question regarding healthcare. And basically, the question is about if the candidates could speak to any plans or policies for helping seniors to remain in their homes. Could you also discuss, how we can gain sort of access to qualified care workers? And for these questions, if we can give 1 minute per response. And we'll start with Karim.
Sorry, I'm just a bit distracted here by my son. So which question?
Oh, no worries. Okay, sorry, Karim. So we're now on to just the questions from the attendees in the chat. The question is basically, what plans or policies do the candidates have for helping seniors remain in their homes?
Yeah,
and if you can also speak to the gaining access to qualified care workers.
Yeah, sorry, I was scrolling and I saw that question. I apologize. So this is an important question. I think we've all experienced door knocking that we have. I've been to the May Robinson Apartments 20 West Lodge, but also meeting seniors who are renters and seniors who are homeowners or condo owners who are on fixed incomes. So we have a few very specific ideas on that. One is a one-time GIS increase to help seniors better access, have the income supports they need. I think the retention and expansion of our pharmacare and dental care programs are really important too, because that helps with the kinds of income supports that are needed for seniors to stay in their homes. I mentioned earlier the Build Canada Homes program, which will allow for expansion and access of all forms of supportive housing, including the kind of housing that would allow for in which there are care workers who are involved. And I'll also say once again that our commitment to our healthcare platform, and you'll see more of that in the coming days. I think we'll have a very strong commitment around healthcare workers, and especially those workers who are working with seniors.
Thank you, Karim. Next, Butila.
Thank you. Definitely when it comes to healthcare and home care, I think specifically the question was for seniors. Here's the thing. There is a huge staffing crisis when it comes to home care. And, part of the NDP's proposal to streamline the credentialing, make it easier for healthcare workers to also work across Canada and to improve the staffing levels in our healthcare sector would be a huge help, especially because we know that one of the biggest struggles that seniors have, even when it comes to accessing home care, is that first of all, a lot of the workers don't show up because they are stretched in themselves and they're, commuting from one location to another, and they only get paid for the amount of time that they're actually interacting with the senior or the patient and not for the travel time. And even when there are workers, then the workers, keeps changing. So we need to ensure that the staffing component is really strong so that we have access to services, the seniors have access to the services that they need. The other aspect is that
I'm afraid that's time.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was 2 minutes.
Oh, it's just one.
Okay, sorry.
Thanks, Patilla. Anya?
Well, the Greens want to develop a national strategy for consistent care for seniors because there is inconsistent care right now, and it's a lot like healthcare, where the economy of scale is lost when you privatize. So there are so many nursing agencies now that provide care workers, PSWs, and all the services at a very great cost. And in fact, these are exploitive agencies that in fact pay their workers less. It used to be $17.50 an hour, then it was 20, but there was a mandatory increase of $3, which private nursing agencies were somehow exempt from. So these are controls that the government of Canada can work on. Now, Greens want to align pension plans with the Paris Agreement because there are increasingly great risks. We lost $9 billion at least in uninsured, insured, and infrastructure damages
I'm
from
afraid that's time.
extreme weather. So there's a risk to what seniors can use from their savings. Thank you.
Anya. Okay, so the next question that we've gotten, we have a couple of questions around some of the candidates, if you could provide more information around whether the federal government can provide what the federal government can do for rent control. Are there any policies that they can implement or support? And if we could start with Butila, please.
Sure, thank you. I mentioned very briefly in my response to the housing question, but this is really important. Rent control for every tenant, no matter where you live. That's what the NDP is fighting for, national rent control. Now, rent control is largely provincial, but here's the thing. The federal government has real leverage. How? Very simple. If provinces and municipalities want federal dollars to build homes, then they must have real rent control. No rent control, no federal funding. And as MPP, I've tabled legislation to bring back real rent control, taking on rent price fixing, organize with tenants to stop illegal evictions. And as your MP, this is something that I really want to champion as well, to continue to fight like hell to make sure that we have strong rent control protections to prevent rents from skyrocketing. Thank you.
Thank you, Butila. Next is Anya.
I've had somebody in the riding request for me to come get this lawn sign back because of rent control. And I just want to clarify that it would be a mixture of off-market housing and market housing. But there's so much profiteering going on right now that certainly rent control is important. And market regulation, public investment in housing is big for Greens. We have an opportunity to embolden the City of Toronto to be good landlords. The Swansea Muse project is in process. I live really close to there, so I keep a close eye on it. And the city does need support right now. They have been really gutted of their tools to act and funding. So uploading costs to the federal level is in the plan as well. I'm going to just say that I just have a personal dog in this fight because I was subject to a problem due to lack of vacancy control. There were corporate property managers who started to cut services to my building. It became
I'm afraid
intolerable.
that's time.
So count on me to fight.
Thank you, Anya. Karim?
Our position is that the most important thing we can do to help tame rents is around the massive expansion of housing stock generally, again, through the Build Canada Homes Corporation and plan. and we think that's the best way to go. Involves, provincial and municipal cooperation, but it is a significant commitment. That is where we'll be directing our energy and our attention. We don't have the proposal the NDP has in their platform in our platform. We think it's most important to build as much as possible and to build cooperatively and to work in hand with provinces and municipalities, based on the local conditions and based on the availability of land, based on all the factors that go into a very complex process around home housing construction.
Thank you, Karim. The next question that we had was on the environment, and we talked about this a little bit, about just climate change. Climate change is a crisis that needs to be addressed with urgent measures. The question is your party prepared to immediately end all government subsidies to the oil and gas industry? And we will be starting with Anya.
Yes, that's Greens don't want Canada to participate in pipelines. It's a Sisyphean project, and we could immediately transition with the use of nuclear, except right now, Doug Ford, so you know, is sourcing uranium as well as the production of 2 reactors from the United States. So energy dependence on the United States is really embedded for Canadians. So clean energy is available to us. Our conventions are always filled with ideas about how to get to the ring of fire, just to keep producing batteries for clean energy sourcing and storing, but reducing hyper-consumerism through smart urbanism, such that we do not need to use as much fuel. Is just a transition that Greens are saying to immediately work on. I saw
afraid
Slato
that's time.
from Wet'suwet'en because I'm really tied to
I'm
what's
afraid
happening
that's time.
out
Sorry.
on the pipeline projects.
Thank you, Anya. Karim?
We need to get to net zero emissions. We need to, we've already taken some measures to reduce some of the tax incentives that are available for this kind of exploration. As been mentioned in other questions, we are in the midst of an economic transition, and I'd be working in this riding with the many folks in the green economy, in the clean tech sector, in this riding, and connecting them with the national government, with Mark Carney, Prime Minister Mark Carney, who I think takes the national perspective on these questions, as we need to diversify and make our economy more resilient. And so I would be a strong advocate for that work.
Thank you, Karim. Butila?
The NDP has always said we need to eliminate handouts for big oil once and for all. There are, over the top profits that they make in the oil and gas companies, and they should not be getting public dollars. That money should go into investing in clean, green energy and helping in a just transition for workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Butila. The next question we have came out of the discussion on immigration. And it's asking, so the question is, will your government look to capitalize on the current wave of American university educators interested in moving to Canada for its more inclusive and science-based approach to learning? And the first to answer will be Karim.
And so, as someone who runs a university-based think tank that looks at technology policy in particular and seeing how these potential waves of interest in Canada are coming from the way that Trump is weaponizing technology, I think is really important. It's a really exciting potential. Past local governments have increased funding for the academic councils that can attract that kind of funding. So it's something I'm very interested in participating in as we do this national economic renewal and look to defend and enhance Canadian sovereignty. There's a real interest in particular from Americans. There's a number of professors, including one who I recruited to our Democracy Exchange Conference, Timothy Snyder, one of the great writers on Ukrainian freedom and authoritarianism around the world. So I think there's a great opportunity here. We would look to do that in concert with academic institutions but it's not something we currently have a plan to do, but I think we have the pieces to help do that in collaboration with others.
Thank you, Karim. Next, Butila.
Thanks. That's a really good question. And I actually heard a really interesting plan that was proposed by UHN. And that was basically saying we need to make sure that Canada is able to recruit the talent that, wants to leave the United States. But we can only make that happen if we're actually going to be investing in research and innovation. The federal government has been lagging on that. And if we're able to bring in particularly emerging researchers in, advancing technology that will keep Canada's economy competitive, that will make, all sorts of great innovation work in Canada possible, we need to do that. But let's not forget, we also need to ensure that investments are there for Canadians. There's so much Canadian talent as well. So we need to make sure that through research, through scholarship, we are encouraging and supporting Canadian researchers. There are a lot of researchers who have to rely on American sources of
That's
money.
time.
Thanks.
Well, I have a hard time believing the other parties right now because there was an opportunity at the University of Waterloo to fund and prototype solar panels innovations for about 20 million they asked for. Well, the coalition of NDP and Liberals said no, and then Germany went ahead and offered 60 million. Now they're the leaders in clean tech that way. So words are nice, but it's been too long, and it's because we're so bound to pipelines. So if you just make the decision to jump into the green transition, we would be in a better place. So our national research councils are lagging, and Greens you can get into their policy about research councils. I want to protect the Science Center. It hits federal checkboxes in terms of equitable distribution of public opportunity, and it was a global leader in immersive science education that's foundational, and what an opportunity for children. Thanks for the question. It's a good one.
All right, thank you. Yes, thank you. These questions are great. We have we did get another question. This one was about sorry, just a second, please. We did get a question around, sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here. Give me a second. Okay, here we go. We did get a question just around how your party would be able to sort of stand up for
The candidates
to stand up for
and
to stand up for Canadians during the challenges that we're going through now. Sorry. Helen or Sue, do you happen to have the
Yeah.
question, that
How
document open?
Yep. How will your party stand up for Canada and Canadians in a changing world order?
Thank you. And we'll start with Butila first, please.
Standing up for Canada means standing up for Canadians, right? To make sure that Canadians are always protected, no matter what the external pressures are. And we do that, as I said previously, by making sure that our economy is strong, that it's resilient, and we make the investments that will actually support Canadians to make sure that cost of living is affordable, that people don't have to spend 50 to 80% of their paycheck on housing, to make sure that people can afford to eat and live. And so protecting Canada and standing up for Canada is to really essentially is the people that we need to do the work for. As well, we want to see and make sure that our country is protected from foreign interference, whether it's China or any other country, Russia. We do not want to see these influences in Canada. So we have to make sure that we have a foreign interference registry, which the Liberal government is dragging their feet. In fact,
That's
wanted
time.
to oppose. Okay.
Thank you, Butila. Next, Anya.
I lost my place. I don't know why this is happening today to me. I'm very tired. Jonathan Pennon was supposed to talk about the style of military peace corps that we're to have, and I was looking forward to that, but we're excluded from the debate as a very singular, important party on the spectrum. So protecting Canadians has a lot to do with food sovereignty, which is such a strong suit for Greens with agriculture and with a great track record. Internationally, there's we can always be a safe haven for those professors and professionals seeking the freedom of expression that exists in Canada. We still are so diverse that we can uphold the tradition of debate. There should be a summit on some of the terminology that is going around, that it has become autocratically controlled, and Canada, I hope, does not get into disappearing people. And I think the time is now to stand together, all parties to stand together with united messaging and be a bit of a Switzerland in the current global climate. So I'll get back to you about the military piece, but you can look up Jonathan Pennon. He talks about it, and he's an experienced journalist who has traveled the world investigating what works and peace and
Great,
war.
that's time.
Thank you, Anya. Karim?
Standing up for Canada at home means rebuilding the connectedness that we have as a country. It means investing in defending those strong national institutions like the CBC that bind us. It means doing the kind of work that makes our economy more resilient, and means more jobs and a better quality of life here in Taiaiako'n High Park, Taiaiako'n Parkdale High Park rather. Abroad, it means I believe in trusting with Mark Carney with a strong mandate to help us navigate this very difficult period. Someone who's navigated crises before, someone who has very strong and existing relationships now with those world leaders who we're going to need to depend on. Canada has relied for far too long, and maybe necessarily, on the US as its guarantor of national security, as well as its top trading partner. Well, now some of those things are under question, under threat. And so, yes, we need to be more resilient online, but we also need to make those investments in things like national defense, in things like new trade agreements that will allow us to be strong on the world stage, because the threat is real, and it's coming not just from the United States, but from some of our other authoritarian
That's time.
nations around the world.
Hey, thank you, Karim. I'm just looking at our chat. I don't see any other questions. Does anyone have any other questions that they want to put into the chat that they'd like to ask? If you can just pop it into, if I can just give you a minute just to, for anyone who wants to ask something, just give you another minute just to add it into the chat, that would be great. Helen or Sue, are you seeing anything come in?
No, I haven't seen anything new come in. I think perhaps we can move ahead with our closing remarks.
I think
No,
so.
there isn't anything.
Okay. All right. So we are going to now just have our closing or just our wrap up and closing remarks from our candidates. Before we start, I just wanted to say, just on behalf of the JRA and for all the attendees here, just thank you to Karim Bardisi, to Butila Karpoche, and to Anya Gorka for taking the time to you know look at the questions, give really thoughtful responses, and for also just running, on a personal level, just running really clean campaigns. It's nice to live in an area where, people are just really respectful with one another during our electoral process. So I just wanted to say thank you to the three of you. And we're going to start with the closing remarks. Anya, you'll be going first.
Oh, sorry, I was reacting. Okay. I thank you so much for this opportunity. It is a wonderful thing. I just want to say that having seen Elizabeth May in action this election, I am so emboldened by her steady, confident communications and just the magnitude of her encyclopedia. This is a leader that holds a sustainable, safe way forward. She's the oldest parliamentarian, and I was really proud to stand up to the federal race here, see her at Billy Bishop Airport, describe the difference between high-speed rail and expanding the airport for jets, and how that's tied into so many sectors that are just reeling from profiteering. There's so much work to do, and I hope that the federal level does get activistic in a grassroots way, because corporatization is leading to just so much wage discrimination right now and increased pressures on First Nations. We
I'm
still
afraid
have a
that's time.
private police force in within the
I'm afraid
RCMP.
that's time.
And I'll look forward to the other debates. Reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Anya. Next, Karim, please.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thanks to the candidates, their families, and all the people who are involved in this effort, and all those who are attending and tuning into this conversation. This is a really critical election for Canada. You know, we never thought there was Canadian sovereignty itself that we'd have to defend, but here we are in a very critical moment with a very clear choice at the national level between a Poilievre government that wants to cut, that seeks to divide, that uses some of the Trump playbook, and that will weaken Canada at this moment, and we need to strengthen Canada, versus a Carney-led government and a renewed Liberal Party of Canada that's looking to fight for, defend, and protect and build the kind of Canada we want. I offer myself in this riding as someone who is raising his family here with my wife, who is going to bring local energy, experience in government, fair-mindedness, balance, and policy knowledge, someone who will show up, who will advocate to the community in Ottawa, and to be part of that national renewal that we need, something that we've seen in our campaign where we have former and current Liberals, former and current New Democrats, former and current Progressive Conservatives who have come together to really find ways to connect with the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Karim. And Butila.
All of the things that make Canada a strong country and us proud to be Canadians, things like our public healthcare system, social safety nets, more recently, pharmacare and dental care, these have all been possible because elected New Democrats fought hard and forced the Liberal government to act. Across the world, we're seeing a shift to the right, including right here in Canada. The Liberals are moving to the right, adopting the same positions as the Conservatives. We need a strong, progressive NDP voice in Parliament at this critical time to counter that. Can you imagine Parliament without NDP? Do we want to have an American-style two-party system? Who's going to be the voice to ensure that the major economic decisions that will be made in the next 4 years will be fair, not favoring big business at the expense of families and the working people of this country? Who's going to keep government in check to keep them honest and working for people? NDP values are Canadian values. The NDP has always been the engine of change, moving Canada forward.
Afraid that's time.
Conservatives won't win here. Vote with their values. Keep power in check. Thank you.
Thank you, Butila. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thank you for all the attendees, those who made time to listen. This will be recorded and we'll post it, I think, Helen, on our JRA website, and probably have a link for it in IG as well. And to everybody who sent in questions and who asked questions in the forum, thank you so much. Just a few reminders. So the federal election, so election day is April 28th. If the polls are open for 12 hours from 9:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. You can look at the elections.ca, Elections Canada website, and it'll give you your information for where the polls are if you haven't received your voting card. The other thing, we have advanced polls starting April 18th to the 21st from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. So if you want to vote ahead of time, you can. And you can vote also at the Taiaiako'n Parkdale High Park local election office that's located on St. Clair West until April 22nd. So if you want to get out before the official election day, you can do so. So thank you, everyone. And we just wanted to say from the JRA, thank you for coming. And if you want any more information on the JRA, we are a nonprofit. We're volunteer run. So if you want any more information about us, you can just scan the QR code and to reach out. And thank you to Kareem and Anya and to Butilla for taking the time again. And good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.